Okay, great. So my name is Sarah. I'm a fourth year PhD student at UC San Diego, University of California, San Diego Biomedical Science Program. And I'm happy to talk to you today about diversity statements. Um, so today, I'll start off with a presentation and then I'll go into Q&A. Since it's just me here today, if you have a question as the presentation is running, you can either save it for the Q&A or put it in the chat. But I'll probably answer most of the questions at the Q&A section of the presentation. And then there will also be a chance for you to unmute yourself during the Q&A if you'd prefer to ask your question verbally. Okay, so I just wanted to start off by saying that there's really no secret guide to writing the best diversity statement. So, really, grad school is an individual journey, and your diversity statement will shine um, with when you put your own perspective, your own life experiences in your statement. Um, and so, I'm sure many of you are spending a lot of time on figuring out which schools to apply to and writing all the application materials. So really make sure to take care of yourself during this process. Be patient with yourself, especially if this is your first time applying. And definitely seek out support. And this will come up later, but ask your friends, your family to read your application materials. That can really be a great help. All right, so what is a diversity statement? So to preface, not all schools are going to ask for a diversity statement, but for the ones that do, it's a really important part of the application process. And so a diversity statement is a statement addressing past and or potential contributions to diversity through teaching, research, and or service. And it's also a reflection of the values that you hold in relationship to principles of diversity. Okay, so this is really a statement for you to describe your past experiences in advancing diversity, equity, inclusion, as well as your plans to contribute to diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, in graduate school. Okay, so what is this statement actually composed of? So typically, a diversity statement will include your understanding of diversity and inclusion. Okay, so this is not a literal definition. You're not literally explaining your diversity of equity inclusion, but instead this should be made clear to that reviewer um, through your telling of some sort of story of your life experience, your identity, things like that. You might also include experiences that have shaped your core values. Again, so you're telling a story, kind of like the personal statement. You're not necessarily like writing a textbook definition of diversity and saying that you contribute to diversity, right? You need to show them, not tell them. Um, you might include how are you currently contributing to diversity within your field, and we'll go into some examples, but this might be like volunteering. This might be previous job experiences, experiences in college. And then you'll also want to um, specifically address how will you contribute to diversity at blank institution. Okay, so I put blank here because the diversity statement should be personalized for every school that you're applying to. And we'll address that more later. And lastly, you'll want to explain how does the institution's diversity and inclusion values align with your own, right? So you really want to convince the committee that you are the best candidate to apply to this school, and this school is the best um, place for you to get your graduate degree. Okay, so you really want to do your research on the institution and the program. So this is really going to help in personalizing your statement for each school. So some type of research that you might do would be, what does diversity mean to the institution and program that you're applying to? So what does this actually mean? You can look if the school has the school or the program has a diversity and inclusion statement. And in the next slide, we'll go over what that might look like. For example, does this uh, institution or program have additional programs that support their DEI mission, right? Are they actively outlining how they're furthering DEI initiatives? And you can also look at representation within the student body and the faculty through the program website. All right, so what might a diversity, equity, and inclusion statement look like? So this is a screenshot from my own program's website. So this is just the website detailing the biomedical sciences graduate program. Can people see my mouse actually? Maybe
Yeah,
not.
we
Yeah.
can.
Okay, okay, great. Okay, so there's an entire tab devoted to diversity. So if this is going to be really helpful in writing your statement. And then down here, I've specifically boxed some really helpful information that I, for example, would include in my diversity statement to UCSD. So for example, it says the Biomedical Sciences Graduate Program Diversity Committee is a joint student faculty committee, and that they aim to promote diversity and foster an environment. Okay. And they go into how they're doing that. So this, for example, in your diversity statement, you might mention that you're hoping to get involved in the diversity committee, just as an example. So definitely for each school that you're applying to, look to see if there's some sort of page or statement that explains what diversity means to the program, or what diversity means to you. I'm sorry, to the program. Okay. So before you even start writing, you should ask yourself a few questions. So first, what are your core values and diversity goals? Okay, so if you're just like you really want to be personalized, and this is how you're gonna separate yourself from the rest of the people writing or applying to the school. And you might ask, what are some lessons and skills that I have gained throughout my life experiences, and how will I apply them to my graduate studies? And you can also think about your experiences with others. So, for example, how have your experiences with others impacted you? And then how will you hope to impact others with these experiences within your field? All right, so this is kind of getting at how are you going to contribute to diversity or further diversity initiatives um, in your field in your graduate program. All right, so I want to get into some myths about diversity statements. So the first one is super important, and that many people think that diversity statements are not that important. Diversity statements are relatively new to the application process, but they are very important, and I would argue just as important as a personal statement as your resume. So you really want to make sure you're devoting time into writing a good diversity statement. Um, they also don't necessarily have to just be about your identity, right? So your experiences are just as important. Um, some people also think that diversity statements should only focus on teaching. For example, like maybe you have to serve as a teaching assistant to an undergraduate course, and you might explain how you would contribute to diversity, equity, and inclusion in that setting. But diversity statements really don't have to be about teaching. You can contribute to DEI initiatives by joining clubs, volunteering, starting your own initiatives. Um, there are many different ways to center your diversity statement around. Um, They also don't necessarily need to be super long. You, the most important thing is that you are adhering to the word count limit, and that should give you a rough estimate of how long they're expecting this diversity statement to be. Mine was about 1 page of writing, single spaced. But again, check each program's requirements. And lastly, one myth is that they're only important for some fields of study. So this is absolutely not true. And if your school is asking for a diversity statement or any questions, additional application questions relating to diversity, it's because they value your opinion on DEI initiatives, and you should do your best um, to make a good statement. Okay. So how is your diversity statement going to be reviewed? This is an example of like an example rubric provided from UC Berkeley. And this is actually an example of how faculty members are scored when they're applying for faculty level positions, but I think the same idea can definitely be applied to on graduate students. So, like we've talked about, there's an entire section on track record, right? This is your previous activities to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion, belonging in research, teaching, and service. Okay, so you don't need to necessarily need to touch on all these topics, but these are some examples. And then the second half is going to relate to your plan. So how are you going to contribute to um, DEI initiatives, for example, at UC Berkeley or any institution? So this page also gives examples. So examples may include specific plans to remove barriers and support the success of all students in the classroom. Again, you'll you may also encounter students in the classroom, but there's also many different ways in which you might remove barriers and address DEI initiatives. Um, as for the question in the chat, the slides will be made available after the presentation. And I will drop the links to all of these resources in the chat. Yeah, I'll do it now, but most of these we haven't touched on yet, but all the resources will be made available after. Okay, what if your statement of purpose contains a lot of information that could be included in a diversity statement that is integral to your research interest? Could there be overlap? Okay, this is an excellent question. So to rephrase, what if your research interests also, your personal statement also might include information that would you would typically find in a diversity statement. So it's okay to have some overlap, specifically if your background, your experiences might influence your research interests. I would just not word for word repeat things that you have written in your personal statement, right? So people are reading both, like every part of your application, including the personal statement and diversity statement. And it's okay to have a lot of the same themes in the same document, but it would probably be best to like rephrase things or maybe like talk about two different experiences that kind of like highlight the same values that you might hold. Okay. Um, all right, so this is a resource on the Project Short website, but I thought it was a nice way to kind of get you thinking about what you might include in the diversity statement. So there's many different subjects relating to personal background, DEI related activities, as well as your plans for grad school. So personal background, like we talked about, identity is a part of this, but it doesn't necessarily have to be in the entire focus of your DEI statement. You can use your life experiences, which, is probably related to identity, but might not necessarily be, as well as your perspectives on DEI. Um, some activities you might include would be volunteer work, mentorship, activism. And again, plans for grad school, this is super important. So how are you going to further, you might be like expanding on the activities that you've previously done before coming to grad school. Maybe you want to join a student organization, or maybe your actual thesis project is related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, kind of like the question we previously got. All right, so now let's go through an example diversity statement. So this statement starts with a hook. So they say, I am well aware that being a scientist or researcher does not mean just being successful in research. At the same time, one should be excellent in his or her interactions with the community, the students, and his and the students, and his role to lead the academic society and in responsibilities to transform the community. Okay, so this individual highlighted their specific goals and values when it comes to diversity. So they want to, it's very clear that they believe community is a big aspect in furthering DEI, um, as well as different volunteer activities. Okay, and so next they kind of go into different examples of past um, activities and experiences that they've been involved with that might fall under the category of diversity, equity, and inclusion. All right, and then here they start to explain why why they think DEI is important. If everyone could just mute themselves, that would be great. Okay. Future plans to contribute to DEI, and this is a continuation of the same statement, where here they're really giving concrete plans for how they will contribute to DEI in their graduate studies. So here they're saying they want to build a website for young female undergraduate students. But again, this you don't necessarily need to come prepared to develop your own tool to contribute to DEI. It can be as simple as joining a club, um, conducting research that furthers DEI initiatives. This is just one example. I think the most important thing to take away is that you need to have a specific idea um, on how you're going to contribute to diversity at your new institution. And that needs to be made clear to your reviewer. So what you don't want to do is just say, I believe diversity is good and I want to contribute to diversity at X institution, right? You really need to give specifics on how you're going to do that and make it clear that you've thought about this clearly. All right. Um, I think this next example actually does an even better job at specifically identifying why this institution is the best place for this person to do their graduate studies. And so this is actually taken from UCSD. And this person, this is just one paragraph from their diversity statement. But they're explaining how, like, what specific programs at UC San Diego are things that they might want to be involved with. And so it really makes it clear that they have tailored their diversity statement to the institution. So, for example, they explain that they say, I plan to become an affiliate of the Cross Cultural Center at UC San Diego to build connections and cultivate cultural diversity in the chemical sciences. All right, so this might be like an already established organization that they're hoping to contribute to, right? And this does a really nice example of, again, tailoring the diversity statement to the institution. And my personal opinion is that your diversity statement should have some paragraph, it can be a little bit smaller than this, that specifically addresses the institution that you're applying to. So definitely do your research for each school and program. Okay, and I just want to end on this. Again, I've put the link for all these resources in the chat. Um, I'm gonna send it one more time, and then I will answer the questions. But this is a worksheet, whoops, provided by the University of Chicago to get you thinking about maybe how to actually start writing a diversity statement. And so I encourage you, if you're feeling a little bit stuck, to maybe start here. Um, Here they are asking you to first list your core identities, to also consider your interaction with others. This is very similar to what we've talked about today. Um, and um, describe a specific time you participated in an activity that was intended to increase the success of students from underrepresented groups, right? This is a little bit more specific. So this might pertain to your activities, this might not. But then it also, the last part here, I think is really nice to think about is consider how your identity may help you empathize or connect with others whose identities do not match your own. Okay, so there's a lot of different, I just want to end with there's a lot of different ways to write a diversity statement. But again, the most important thing is just that you've made it clear that um, you've thought about how you're going to thoughtfully contribute to DEI initiatives at your campus, and you should show how you have previously been involved in activities um, or experiences that are related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. All right, so the last thing I just wanted to say is a reminder to really ask your friends and family to review your statement. I know I said this at the beginning, but many of you are going to be applying to schools that require both a personal statement and a diversity statement. And so both of those statements should have a part or paragraph maybe within those statements that specifically address each school that you're applying to. And it's very easy to send the wrong statement to the wrong school. I actually made this mistake. That's a very easy way to get rejected very quickly. So I wish that I had maybe just asked people like, oh, can you scan this document and just confirm that everywhere that says Vanderbilt University says Vanderbilt University and not this other applicate or this other school that I'm also applying to, right? So just a reminder to slow down and like really make sure that you're sending your applications where you intended for them to go. Okay, so let's move into Q&A. I'm going to start with questions in the chat, but feel free to type additional questions in the chat, or you can just go ahead and unmute yourself. Okay, so is this the Project Short website? I hope the first link I provided here answered the question. That does look like the correct URL. And I provided the link here to our resources tab, which has diversity statement examples as well as personal statement examples. Okay. If we talk about DEI and research, do we also have to incorporate the work of the supervisor I intend to work with? Perhaps how the advisor can help carry work forward. Yeah, I think this is definitely, I wouldn't say this is something you have to do, but I think it's if the advisor has a clear track record for like advancing DEI initiatives, then I think it's very appropriate to say that explain how your advisor will help support you in furthering your own DEI goals. But again, if maybe you're like not able to find specific examples um, of how your advisor has engaged with diversity, equity, and inclusion in the past, then I don't think you need to discuss it. Okay. The next question is, would it be okay to write about having learned about DEI through extracurricular, non-academic activities? For example, serving as a DEI coordinator for a student organization, along with other more research-related anecdotes. Definitely. Okay, so I this raises a great point. Like your diversity, if you have experiences that contribute to diversity, they do not have to be research or academic related. Um, you know, it I guess I would encourage you to just think about how your non-academic activities might be able to translate to your new institution. So for example, like even if you have experience learning about DEI through extracurricular activities, you know, there's still you're maybe you're going to you're applying to large institutions with a large undergraduate population. Extracurricular activities are very important. So I think that's actually absolutely appropriate to talk about. Not everything has to be solely about research. And I would suspect that most people actually do not have um, a direct uh, like experience either promoting DEI or um, learning about DEI in a research related context. Okay. Um, great. So we have plenty of time. So if there's additional questions, I'm happy to stay on. But yeah, thank you again so much for joining today, and I'll be around for a little while. Yeah, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, Sarah. I have a quick question. So I know you said one thing to do is look at the graduate school that you're applying to or the program and look at their diversity or DEI like website or like if they have like the usually like a DEI report of like the core values of the school. So once we have kind of read that and understood their core values, when writing our statement, should we if there are values that we also like have in similar to the school, should we like state those clearly, kind of referencing, oh, I have these certain values and I know that this university has them as well, or something along the lines of that that can help?
Yeah, definitely. I think that would be a strong argument for explaining why this program or this institution is one that you're applying to. Um, you can explicitly state that as you've said, or say something along the lines of like, I like really the values of this institution align with my own as exemplified through, this experience that I've just talked about at length within my diversity statement, something along those lines. But yeah, I think it, it's important to show that, their goals align with your own.
Okay, great. And even like writing specifically, like actually naming certain like clubs and committees that they have at the university that are DEI related that you would like to contribute or either join. You said that that's something that you would recommend putting in the diversity statement, correct?
Definitely. And again, you're not committed to joining any of those programs, obviously. But I think it just shows that you took the time to research about the school and that you're really interested in going there.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for your help. This was really helpful.
Great. Yeah, we have another question with or someone has their hand raised. You can mute yourself.
Hi, Sarah. So I have a question regarding when we're writing the statement. I think when we're sharing our experiences, etc., do we run the risk of sounding like a victim? Because I don't think that's something that the programs want to hear. And I was just wondering, what would you recommend to avoid this mistake? Like, oh, this happened to me, and
Right. That's a great question. And I think this also comes up for people who have maybe like a medically focused research interest where they're like, oh, I know someone who died of this disease and now I want to cure the disease, right? Um,
yeah,
so yeah, it's a good question. So um, I think if you have if your identity or personal life experience feels important enough to you, in terms of how it impacts your view on diversity, I would absolutely include it. Um, Maybe if you're worried about sounding a little bit like a victim, I would rephrase it. And, I think it's definitely appropriate to talk about hardships that you have faced. But I would also include a component of maybe how you're going to, um, how that has shaped your view on diversity and how you would like to support students who also may have similar life experiences, right? So this statement is not just about you and your own experiences, but it's also clear that you're not thinking about how to support other people um, or contribute to the larger community. Um, was that, did that answer your question?
yeah, it does. Thank you so much.
Mm. Okay, we have a question in the chat. If no structure or word limit is specified, what would be an appropriate length? Um, I'm I'm actually surprised to hear that there's not necessarily a word limit. But I can just share for the schools where I had to submit a diversity statement. My statement was about one um, page long, single spaced. Um, and on the Project Short website, there's a few other examples, and I also dropped the link for examples specifically at UCSD, which aren't necessarily on the Project Short website. Um, and you can kind of get a feel for how long the statement should be. Just something to note is I did have a few schools that didn't necessarily ask for a diversity statement, but they asked me, there was like a supplemental question section of the application where they asked a few questions, some of which related to diversity. So I think in that situation, the statement would, well, it's not a statement, right? You're answering a short question, so I think it would probably be a little bit shorter than like a full long statement. All right. Are there any other questions?